Can I Not Marry Audio Web Novel Chapter 61, Days of Working with the President 3. After a while, Jason had a frightened expression as he entered Lien Jun's office. Even if you have read thousands of romance novels, you'll never see such advertisement. President, the person who just ran out was it is young. Then he paused as he stared at Lien Jun with shock. President, what's on your lips? Lien Jun stretched out his hand to wipe his mouth. Seeing the red lipstick stains on his fingers, he frowned. Jason, starting tomorrow, all employees at Lien Enterprise are not allowed to wear makeup, especially the reception. Yes, President. And also ask the front desk to send 2 copies of the visitor list to my office daily. Yes. But President, if the front desk did receive any important visitors, they'll directly report to you. There's no need for them to send a report twice a day. Lien Jun narrowed his eyes. Then does Uncle think it's more suitable several times a day instead? Jason wiped his sweat. Twice as good, twice as good. Therefore, as a small shrimp employee oppressed in the bottom of a company, never believe the so-called words of negotiating with the company leader's decision, s. Because a lot of unreasonable decisions are often produced in such a simple dialogues. Since then, Du Lacey was dismayed to find that almost every day she had to send the files to the president's office. Few days later, even Xiao Wang was envious of her. Xiao Du, if I knew earlier, I would have entered the company a few years later. Why? Du Lacey looked at the documents within her hands, filled with apprehension. Before we worked in reception, when did we have the opportunity to see the big boss? However, once you arrive, the company established this new policy. You are very lucky. Xiao Wang said while revealing an infinite yearning in her eyes. Du Lacey was ignorant. What new policy? Is this? Xiao Wang said, pointing to the files in Du Lacey's hand that needed to be delivered to the president's office. The higher-ups demanded that everyday reception must also send 2 copies of the visitors list to the president's office. But speaking of which, it's really strange. The president handle a myriad of affairs daily. How come all of a sudden he's so interested in the visitors list? You don't know this, but there were many strange people within these visitors. Du Lacey didn't listen to the next set of words Xiao Wang said, because she stomped out in anger. So it turns out this is all the president's conspiracy. Too obsessive. Simply too obsessive. So holding the documents, she stormed into the elevator. She decided to settle the accounts with the president. When the elevator was halfway towards the president's office, a man suddenly entered with a hamburger in his mouth. Upon seeing Du Lacey, he hurriedly hid the half-eaten hamburger behind and guilty called out, "Young madam." Du Lacey only discovered the person who entered the elevator was Jason after she regained her sense after being in a whirl of wrath. Jason looked at the document within her hands and said, "Young madam, you're sending documents to the president." Listening to Jason's tone, he must know the ins and outs of what's happening, so she asked, "Jason, do you know why the president requested reception to send the visitors list twice a day?" "This, may be because the president wants to be relatively attentive," Jason said with a face of distress. "Is it?" Du Lacey looked at him. She suddenly had an idea. Putting a smile on her face, she asked, "Jason, in a moment are you going to see the president?" Jason was rather baffled. "Yes." Du Lacey battered her eyes at him. "Since it's on the way, can you help me bring the list to the president?" After she finished speaking, she quickly shoved the paper bag into Jason's hands. Jason started to panic. "Young madam, this won't do. Absolutely cannot be done." He has finally been caught by her. Du Lacey narrowed her eyes and asked, "Why? This, he began to stutter. "This is great." So it turns out it was the two of them joining hands together to corner her. She could not win against YHE president, however this small little employee. Du Lacey looked at Jason. He is indeed a good object for her to release her outlet. "Jason, you haven't eaten breakfast." She evilly laughed. Poor Jason's forehead was dripping with sweat. Haven't eaten. Then you must be hungry, right?" I'm still all right. If you are hungry, you can finish that hamburger of yours. It must be uncomfortable holding onto it." No need. "Oh, I just remembered." Du Lacey suddenly thought of something and said, "Isn't there a policy in the company stating that during work hours employees are not allowed to order takeout?" Don't tell me this hamburger was." Jason finally broke down. "Young madam, I'll help you deliver them." In his previous life he must have been indebted towards this married couple. T___________. T. Jason pulled a long face as he held the original files Du Lacey was supposed to deliver, and walked into Lien Jun's office. Once the paper bag was placed on the table, Lien Jun's sharp eyes swept past him. "Uncle, could it be your position as the president's assistant not busy enough, so you wanted to transfer the reception?" Once Jason heard these words, he staggered backwards. "President, I've been wrongly accused. The thing is like this, bala." As Jason was in the middle of vividly depicting the situation, Lien Jun quickly understood the ins and outs of the whole thing. After Jason finished speaking, he said with an innocent expression, "President, all my doings were forced by young Madame Ah. Lien Jun nodded his head. I know, you can retreat. Jason breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you, President. Remember before work ends to send me a 3,000-word review to my office. Give me a more detailed description of how you obtained your burger. Jason ran out of tears. Du Lacey was singing the national anthem downstairs. She felt that she could only revenge take on Jason, and only this way she could prevent the president's plot from succeeding. It was killing two birds with one stone. She was simply too clever. The president has been cunning for so long, yet she unexpectedly also played back on him. It felt just like she was a serf finally obtaining liberation. Even her walking pace unexpectedly felt airy. It could be said she floated back to reception. Once she arrived there was a big bouquet of roses on the reception desk. When a person is in high spirits, everything seems merrier. Everything she saw felt delightful. Seeing the bouquet of roses, Du Lacey changed her humming of the national anthem to "You are my rose, you are my flower." It sent chills down one's spine when they heard it. Xiao Du, you're so happy. Xiao Wang came over and greeted her. Yes, today I'm in a very good mood. Du Lacey continued to hum the tune of the song. No wonder, that's such a big bouquet of roses, Xiao Wang said to herself. Yes, this is a big bunch. Du Lacey didn't detect anything wrong. All of a sudden, Xiao Wang came closer with a look of gossip. Who sent you these roses? Is it your boyfriend? Ah. The roses, of course. Wait a moment, why are you asking me who sent them? She finally felt something was strange. Nonsense, if I don't ask you, am I supposed to ask Xiao Hua? The roses isn't for her. If it's not for her, then who is it for? Xiao Wang stared at Du Lacey as if she was looking at an alien. Could it be you don't know who sent you these flowers? What? Du Lacey was dumbfounded. After determining there isn't another Du Lacey within the company, she stared at the very luxurious red roses, falling into a deep state of confusion. Who would send such a big bouquet of roses to her for no particular reason? Neither written a name on the card, or a contact number, not even an address stating who it was. This is also a bit too strange. Could it be the president who sent them? However, very soon Du Lacey ruled out the idea. Because due to her understanding of Lien Jun, he would never do such surreptitious things. If it isn't the president, that in the end who could it be? Du Lacey thought for a long time, yet she still couldn't understand, thus this time she could only use her sensitive professional journalist skills. The roses of unknown origin wouldn't be from a controlled crime syndicates, right? Although she's not an important figure, but what if those criminals were aiming at her because of her identity as the president's wife? Du Lacey seriously thought, these bouquet of roses are unreliable. It just happens at this time, Long Xiaohua also came over. Seeing the bouquet of roses on the table, her eyes lit up. Wow. What a big bunch of roses. Lacey, who sent them to you? Who? How romantic. Du Lacey was suddenly enlightened. Do you like them? If you like them, I'll give them to you. Long Xiaohua was overwhelmed by an unexpected favor. Really? But these roses should be very expensive. I also don't know, but I think the flower shop sent them to the wrong person. Anyway, I am allergic to pollen. If you like it, then you can take it. So, Du Lacey gifted this mysterious bouquet of rose to someone else. In fact, Du Lacey wasn't fabricating lies to deceive Long Xiaohua. One of the main reasons she bid farewell to problematic bouquet of roses was largely because she really is allergic to pollen. See, not long after Long Xiaohua left with the bouquet of roses, her skin began to itch. At first it was only slightly itchy. After scratching a few times it began to become unbearable, thus she began to fidget around. Unexpectedly, these high-quality roses also contain a high amount of pollen. Usually when she came into contact with a little bit of daisy, at most she'll sneeze a few dozen times. However, the symptoms today were unexpectedly serious. Indeed, she was born with the life of never receiving flowers. Finally, Du Lacey found the itch unbearable, and decided to go to the locker room to change into a new pair of clothes. She was running to the locker room, all the way to the elevator. Then when the elevator door opened, she ran across the corridor. In fact, this itching isn't a sickness. However, once an itching flares up, it was extremely unbearable. The design of Lien Enterprise locker room was very user-friendly. Inside there was a washroom and also supply hot water, which at this time for Du Lacey was simply godsend. She rushed into the washroom. Quickly she took off her outerwear, then taking a towel to wipe off the areas that may have been contaminated with pollen, she felt much more comfortable afterwards. In the future, if I ever encounter such high-quality flowers again, I'll be sure to keep a little farther distance, she spoke to herself as she took just off her clothes, entering the wet area, ready for a shower. Suddenly, there was an unusual smell in the air. Very naturally Du Lacey looked around. Then, she was petrified to death. She saw Lien Jun with his hands inserted in the pocket of his trousers, his slender legs folded as he leaned against the side of the lockers, staring at her with a pair of lazy eyes which contain a hint of teasing. After being shocked for 2 seconds, Du Lacey screamed. Immediately she covered her chest with her clothes. What kind of joke is this? Why would the president appear in the women's locker room? The most terrible thing was that she was only in her underwear. Heaven, earth, drill a hole for her so she can crawl in. Tat, you, what are you doing here? Dulacey blushed, clutching her coat to cover her chest. She questioned him. Work inspection, please. When would the big boss need to inspect the women's locker room? Dulacey faintly glanced at Lien Jun and reminded him, this is the women's locker room. I know. His expression was very calm. You know, yet you came in. Quickly get out. Get out. This is my company, he said very naturally. Yes, it's your company, however you can't casually enter the women's locker room. Dulacey almost wanted to cry. As a sad reminder, her chest suddenly felt cold, the coat within her hands were already snatched away. When she looked at Lien Jun again, he took one glance at them before throwing them to the corner. And then looking at her, he nodded with satisfaction. It looks better this way. Dulacey ran out of tears. As a result, she was completely exposed. It didn't make a difference if she covered herself with her hands or not. If she tried to cover herself, then she seems too reserved. After all, they had been husband and wife for so long, what place had he not seen? However, if she doesn't cover up, she feels uncomfortable, as if she's parading through the streets naked. Moving her hands up and down, she repeated these actions several times. She finally cannot stand it. Oh, my gosh. This year rogues are not the terrible ones. You should be afraid of rogues who had the legal rights. The legal rights the president had been their marriage certificate. Under the scrutiny of the rogue monitoring, Dulacey changed her clothes, and then like a thief she secretly opened a crack of the locker room door and peeked out. What are you doing? Lien Jun asked. Hush. Dulacey turned around and made a silencing gesture. You need to be quiet. If the employees discover you are here, it'll be bad. You gotta be joking. He's the dignified President Lien, why would he lose face? However, seeing her state of apprehension, Lien Jun suddenly felt it was very interesting. He raised his eyebrow and asked, are you worried about me? Dulacey was busy keeping a lookout. Even if she didn't want to, she had to. Nonsense. If I don't care about you, who would care about you? Ah. The person behind her remained silent. Then a moment later, he asked, you worry about me, because you love me. Nonsense. If I don't love you, who will love you? Ah. Are you currently making a love confession to me? Nonsense. If I'm not making a love confession to you, who would I be saying it to? She paused for a bit, then her face turned red all the way down to her neck. She's done. If one is not careful, one would be betrayed by the president. Doo-doo. The voice behind her suddenly became very gentle. The distance between closed in. The tension in the air was very sexual. Dulacey's head was leaning against the door. She was afraid to turn around. Doo-doo. He suddenly shouted, taking a hold of her waist, he pulling her into his arms. Dulacey stretched out her hand to touch her face. Her temperature was hot enough to boil an egg. Doo-doo. He called out for the third time, resting his face on her neck. He carefully smelled her body odor, holding her hand a little tighter, as if he wanted to rub her into his body. Doo-doo, I also love you. Hearing his voice whispering into her ears, the gentle waves penetrated her eardrums, striking each nerve on her body. Dulacey froze in place, letting his kiss wander from her neck slowly to her earlobes, gently sealing his lips, causing her body to slightly tremble. Her chest had a crisp, numb feeling. As if her body was immersed in a deep pool, slowly sinking. First it was her body, then her heart. As she was submerged in the water, suddenly there came a knock at the door. Is there someone in there? Dulacey suddenly regained her senses and wanted to answer, however her lips were sealed. A kiss that left a gap on their lips, his tongue freely roamed, as if he was using all of his strength to devour her. The person outside was still knocking on the door, as if they were trying to open the door. She didn't know how much weight the two of them combination contained, however their love was unshakable, weighing the door.